My name is Brenna, and at 32 years old, I never expected to be fired for doing my job correctly. As a senior compliance specialist at one of the largest banks in the country, my role was to ensure large transactions followed proper protocols. When Gregory Bennett, our new CFO, terminated me at 3:59 p.m. for questioning his $49 million transfer, he had no idea what was coming. By 4:30 p.m., his smug smile had vanished as he learned his funds were frozen. Before I dive into this wild story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for what is right in the corporate world. My journey in banking started 7 years ago after graduating with honors in finance and business ethics from Northwestern University. Coming from a middle-class family in Michigan where my mother taught high school and my father worked as an accountant, I learned early on about the importance of financial responsibility and integrity. Those values guided me to my position at Meridian Financial Group, one of the top 10 financial institutions in the country. At Meridian, my role in the compliance department involved reviewing large transactions to ensure they met regulatory requirements. We were essentially the financial gatekeepers preventing money laundering, fraud, and other illegal activities. My direct supervisor, Jessica Morgan, was a brilliant woman with 15 years of experience who had taken me under her wing from day one. We had developed a close professional relationship built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to doing things by the book. My closest colleague was Marcus Reed, a former federal investigator who brought a wealth of knowledge about financial crimes to our team. We often collaborated on complex cases, and I valued his insights and friendship. Another important person in my professional circle was Diana Lopez from Human Resources, who had helped me navigate the corporate structure and was always available for advice about career advancement. Before Gregory Bennett arrived, Meridian had a reputation for its professional environment and respect for employees. Our previous CFO, Thomas Wilson, understood the importance of compliance and supported our department fully. The culture encouraged thorough work rather than rushed decisions, and upper management recognized that proper due diligence ultimately protected the company. During my time at Meridian, I had identified and prevented several suspicious transactions, including a $10 million wire transfer that turned out to be part of an international fraud scheme. My attention to detail and dedication to protocol had earned me consistent positive performance reviews and 2 promotions in 5 years. Jessica had hinted that I was being considered for a senior management position, which would have been a significant step up in my career. Outside of work, I lived in a small but comfortable apartment in the downtown area, about 15 minutes from the office. I had recently started dating Ryan Mitchell, an architectural engineer I met through a mutual friend. Our relationship was still new but promising, and he was supportive of my career ambitions. We had begun discussing moving in together, and I had my eye on a condo that would be perfect for us. My financial situation was stable, but not without its pressures. I had just put a down payment on that condo and taken on a 30-year mortgage. Student loans still took a chunk of my monthly income, and while I was comfortable, I certainly needed my job security. In the months before everything changed, Meridian had been acquired by International Financial Holdings, a massive conglomerate looking to expand its American operations. The acquisition brought uncertainty and whispers of restructuring. Several executives had already been replaced, and rumors about more changes circulated daily. Still, I felt confident in my position given my track record and the critical nature of compliance work in banking. Little did I know that the arrival of one man would upend everything I had worked for and challenge my professional ethics in ways I never anticipated. The announcement came via a company-wide email on a Monday morning. Gregory Bennett had been appointed as the new Chief Financial Officer of Meridian Financial Group, effective immediately. The message included his impressive resume, 45 years old MBA from Wharton, former CFO at Pinnacle Investments, and a reputation for aggressive growth strategies. The following day, we were summoned to the main conference room for his introduction. From the moment Gregory walked in, his presence commanded attention. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. His handshake was firm but brief, his smile never quite reaching his eyes as he scanned the room, seemingly assessing each of us. His opening speech set the tone for what was to come. "The days of comfort and complacency are over," he announced. International Financial Holdings did not acquire Meridian to maintain the status quo. We are here to maximize profits, streamline operations, and eliminate unnecessary barriers to growth. When he said unnecessary barriers, his gaze lingered on our compliance team for just a moment too long. I exchanged a quick glance with Jessica, whose slight frown told me she had caught it too. Within 2 weeks of Gregory's arrival, the changes began. First came the layoffs. 15% of the workforce was let go, primarily from middle management and support departments. The official reason was redundancy elimination, but the message was clear: Gregory was consolidating power and removing potential opposition. Next came the new performance metrics. Our department targets shifted from quality of review to quantity and speed. Suddenly, we were expected to process 30% more transactions with the same staffing levels. The pressure was immense, and several team members began working evenings and weekends just to keep up. My first direct interaction with Gregory came about 3 weeks after his arrival. I was reviewing a series of international transfers when he appeared at my desk unannounced. "You must be Brenna Taylor," he said, not bothering to introduce himself. "Jessica tells me you are one of our top compliance specialists." "Thank you, sir. I try my best to ensure our transactions meet all regulatory requirements." He nodded dismissively. "I need you to expedite the approval on the Westfield acquisition payments. The board is anxious to complete that deal." I explained that several aspects of the transaction still required additional documentation as per banking regulations. Gregory leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Let me be clear. These delays are costing us money. Find a way to approve it by tomorrow." After he left, Jessica approached my desk. "I see you met our new boss," she said quietly. "He wants me to rush the Westfield approval." Jessica sighed. "Be careful, Brenna. Gregory doesn't view compliance the same way Thomas did. To him, we are an obstacle, not a protection." Over the next few months, Gregory initiated numerous large transactions with new partners that had never worked with Meridian before. Many involved offshore entities in jurisdictions known for their banking secrecy. Each time the pressure to approve quickly was intense, with Gregory personally following up on any delay longer than 24 hours. I began noticing patterns that concerned me. Several of the new partner companies had been established only months before their deals with Meridian. Others had complicated ownership structures that made it difficult to identify the ultimate beneficiaries. When I raised these issues with Jessica, she seemed troubled but also constrained. "Document everything," she advised. "Follow protocol, but be aware that Gregory has the ear of the new CEO. They work together at Pinnacle." I shared my concerns with Marcus during lunch one day. "Something feels off about these new deals," I said, "especially the ones with Aperture Holdings and Terra Nova Investments." Marcus nodded. I noticed the same thing. The ownership chains lead through 3 different countries before hitting dead ends. Classic obfuscation technique. "Should we escalate this beyond Jessica?" Marcus picked at his food thoughtfully. "Not yet. Gather more evidence first. Remember what happened to Carl in fraud prevention when he questioned the Austrian deal. Carl had been transferred to a branch office in a small town 300 miles away. The message had been clear. The office atmosphere had transformed completely. Where once we had open discussions and collaborative problem-solving, now people spoke in whispers and avoided being seen as troublemakers. Several of my colleagues had begun approving transactions with minimal scrutiny, afraid of becoming Gregory's next target. I understood their fear but couldn't bring myself to compromise my professional standards. I never imagined that adherence to those standards would soon cost me my job and thrust me into the center of a financial scandal that would shake Meridian to its core. The $49 million transaction landed on my desk on a Tuesday morning. At first glance, it appeared to be a standard investment funding transfer to Aperture Holdings, one of the new partners Gregory had brought in. The paperwork indicated it was for a real estate development project in Southeast Asia, specifically a luxury resort complex in Malaysia. As I began my standard review process, several red flags immediately caught my attention. First, the documentation was unusually sparse for a transaction of this magnitude. Typically, a $49 million international transfer would come with extensive supporting materials, detailed business plans, market analysis, legal opinions, ownership verification, and source of funds documentation. This file contained only the basic transfer instructions and a 10-page business overview that was heavy on glossy images but light on financial projections. Second, the timing seemed rushed. The approval was being requested with only a 48-hour window before the funds needed to be released. Standard procedure for transactions over $20 million required a minimum 5-business-day review period. I pulled up our database to research Aperture Holdings more thoroughly. The company had been founded 18 months ago in Singapore with subsidiary entities in the Cayman Islands and Cyprus. Their listed projects included 2 other resort developments, neither of which appeared to have broken ground according to public records I could find. Something about the name of Aperture's founder Alexander Hamilton tugged at my memory. I couldn't place where I had heard it before, but it felt familiar. I made a note to look into that further. When I raised my initial concerns in our department's morning review meeting, Jessica looked troubled. "Gregory has already mentioned this transaction to me twice," she said. "He emphasized that it's a priority for the executive team." "The documentation is insufficient," I replied, "and the company structure raises several compliance questions." Jessica nodded slowly. "Document your concerns formally. I'll back you up, but be thorough. We need to be able to justify any delay." That afternoon, I received an email from Gregory asking about the status of the transfer. His message was terse. "The Aperture transaction needs to be processed immediately. The delay is unacceptable." I responded professionally, explaining the specific documentation that was still required per banking regulations and our internal policies. Within 5 minutes, my phone rang. It was Gregory. "I don't think you understand the importance of this deal," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "This is a strategic partnership that has been approved at the highest levels." "I understand, sir, but without the proper documentation, I cannot approve the transfer. It would violate federal banking regulations." "Your job is to facilitate business, not obstruct it," he snapped. "I need this approved by tomorrow morning." After hanging up, I decided to dig deeper. Using our internal databases, I conducted a more thorough background check on Aperture Holdings and its executives. What I found increased my concerns. Alexander Hamilton had been involved with 3 companies that had faced regulatory investigations in the past 5 years. None had resulted in criminal charges, but 2 had paid substantial settlements for regulatory oversights. More concerning was what I discovered when I cross-referenced employee records from Gregory's previous employer, Pinnacle Investments. Alexander Hamilton had worked there as a vice president of international development during the same 3-year period when Gregory was CFO. They weren't just business associates. They had a direct working relationship. This connection was not disclosed anywhere in the transaction documentation, which was a clear violation of our conflict of interest policies. Any personal or professional relationship between a senior executive and an external partner needed to be declared, and the executive recused from the approval process. I shared this information with Jessica privately in her office. "This changes things," she said, looking genuinely worried. "A prior working relationship that wasn't disclosed is a serious issue." "Should we take this to Compliance Director Charlotte Wilson?" I asked. Jessica hesitated. "Let me think about this overnight. Gregory has been watching our department closely. I need to consider how to approach this without putting our team at risk." The next morning, Jessica called in sick, which was highly unusual for her. She had missed only 2 days of work in the 3 years I had known her. I tried calling her cell phone but got no answer, just a text, saying she would try to connect later. That same morning, I noticed Gregory watching me from his glass-walled office as I worked at my desk. 3 times he walked past on his way to meetings, each time glancing at my computer screen. The surveillance was obvious and unsettling. By afternoon, I had compiled a detailed report of all the compliance issues with the Aperture transaction. The list had grown to include 1. Insufficient documentation of the source of funds. 2. Inadequate business plan and financial projections. 3. Undisclosed prior relationship between our CFO and the partner company founder. 4. Multiple regulatory issues with related companies. 5. Unusual routing of funds through 3 different jurisdictions. 6. Accelerated timeline without justification. As I was finalizing my report, I received another email from Gregory requesting my presence in his office immediately. The confrontation that would change the course of my career was about to begin. I gathered my notes and the transaction file before heading to Gregory's corner office. His assistant Amanda gave me a sympathetic look as she announced my arrival. That small gesture told me she had witnessed similar summoning before, and they rarely ended well. Gregory was standing behind his desk, looking out at the city skyline when I entered. He didn't turn immediately, making me wait in silence for nearly 30 seconds before acknowledging my presence. It was a power move designed to make me uncomfortable, and I refused to let it work. I stood straight, clutching my folder of documentation, and waited patiently. "Sit down, Brenna," he finally said, turning and gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I understand you're still holding up the Aperture transaction." "I've identified several compliance issues that need to be resolved before approval," I explained, keeping my voice steady. "I've prepared a detailed report." Gregory sat down and leaned back in his chair. "Let me be frank. This transaction has already been approved by people above your pay grade. Your job is simply to process it, not to question it. With all due respect, sir, that's not how compliance works. Each transaction must meet regulatory requirements regardless of who has provisionally approved it." His expression hardened. "You've been with Meridian for what? 5 years?" 7, I corrected. 7 years in the same department. "Perhaps you've become too comfortable, too inflexible. Banking is evolving, Brenna. Those who can't adapt get left behind." I opened my folder and placed my report on his desk. "I've documented all the issues that need to be addressed. Most concerning is the undisclosed prior working relationship between you and Mr. Hamilton." Gregory's face flushed slightly, the only indication that I had struck a nerve. "Alexander Hamilton is a common name. I've worked with hundreds of executives over my career. You worked directly with this Alexander Hamilton at Pinnacle for 3 years. He reported to you as VP of International Development from 2018 to 2021. That relationship should have been disclosed, as per our conflict of interest policy." For a moment, Gregory seemed taken aback that I had this information. Then his expression shifted to one of cold anger. "You've been investigating me. I've been doing my job investigating a transaction that raises multiple red flags." Gregory stood up abruptly. "Your job is what I say it. Island. This transaction is happening with or without your approval. I've already discussed this with CEO Adams, and she understands the strategic importance." This was a bluff, and I knew it. Patricia Adams had a background in regulatory compliance before becoming CEO. She would never knowingly approve a transaction with such obvious issues. "Then you won't mind if I share my concerns directly with CEO Adams as well," I replied, maintaining eye contact. Gregory walked around his desk until he was standing directly over me, an intimidation tactic I had seen before from insecure managers. "Listen carefully. I brought this deal to Meridian. It represents a major opportunity for our expansion in Asia. If you obstruct this further, I will personally ensure that your career in banking is over." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining reality. Now I want you to transfer this file to Marcus. He understands the bigger picture." This surprised me. Marcus and I had just discussed our shared concerns about these transactions days ago. Had Gregory already gotten to him? "Marcus has an even stricter interpretation of compliance requirements than I do," I said, wondering if Gregory knew this. "That's not your concern anymore. Transfer the file to him and move on to your other work." I took a deep breath. I cannot do that. As the assigned compliance officer, I have a legal obligation to document all potential violations. Transferring the file without resolution would make me complicit in any regulatory breaches. Gregory's face darkened. "This is your final warning. Approve the transaction or face the consequences." "I cannot approve a transaction that violates federal banking regulations and our own policies. It would be unethical and potentially illegal." "Then you leave me no choice." Gregory walked back around his desk and sat down. "Brenna Taylor, your employment with Meridian Financial Group is terminated effective immediately." Though I had sensed this was coming, the words still hit like a physical blow. 7 years of dedication dismissed in a single sentence. On what grounds, I managed to ask, my voice steadier than I felt. Insubordination and failure to perform your duties as directed. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You have 30 minutes to leave the building. I stood up slowly. You're making a serious mistake. This transaction has multiple legal and regulatory problems. That's no longer your concern. He picked up his phone. Security, please come to my office. As I walked out, I saw Amanda again. The look on her face confirmed what I already knew: this was wrong, and everyone could see it. The security guard who met me outside Gregory's office, Frank, was someone I had greeted every morning for years. Now he looked uncomfortable as he followed me to my desk. I'm sorry about this, Brenna, he said quietly as I began gathering my photos and personal items into a cardboard box. News travels fast in an office. Within minutes, colleagues were stealing glances my way, whispering among themselves. Marcus appeared at my desk, his expression troubled. What happened? He asked in a low voice. Gregory fired me for refusing to approve the Aperture transaction, I replied, continuing to pack my things. He can't do that. There are whistleblower protections. Apparently he thinks he can. I paused, looking directly at Marcus. He's transferring the file to you. Be careful. Marcus nodded slightly, understanding my warning. What are you going to do? What I have to, I replied. As Frank began to usher me toward the elevator, I made one last stop at Jessica's empty desk. Her assistant Tyler was nearby. Tyler, when Jessica returns, please tell her to check her secure email. It's important. Tyler nodded, looking confused but agreeing to pass along the message. Before leaving, I had used my still active email to send Jessica a secure message with all the documentation I had gathered, including my full report on the Aperture transaction. It was a risk, potentially violating company policy on data transfer, but I knew this was bigger than policy now. As I walked out of the Meridian building at 3:59 p.m. carrying my box of belongings, I felt a strange mix of emotions: shock, anger, fear about my future, but also a surprising sense of clarity. Gregory had made a critical mistake. He thought firing me would end the problem, but he had just created a much bigger one for himself. The bright afternoon sunlight hit my face as I exited the Meridian building, temporarily blinding me after hours under fluorescent office lighting. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, clutching my box of belongings as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Pedestrians flowed around me, everyone hurrying somewhere important, while I had just lost my professional anchor. My first instinct was to call Ryan, but I stopped myself. This wasn't just a personal crisis, it was potentially much bigger. Gregory was pushing through a suspicious $49 million transaction that violated numerous regulations. If I simply went home to lick my wounds, that money would be transferred, and whatever scheme was underway would succeed. I found a quiet coffee shop 2 blocks away, ordered a large Americano, and claimed a corner table where I could think. The trembling in my hands betrayed the adrenaline, still coursing through my system, but my mind was becoming increasingly clear. I had spent 7 years building a reputation for integrity and expertise. I wasn't going to let Gregory Bennett destroy that in one afternoon. I pulled out my personal phone and scrolled to a contact I had hoped never to need. Charlotte Wilson was Meridian's executive director of compliance, several levels above Jessica in the corporate hierarchy. We had met at various company functions, and she had once commented positively on a thorough investigation I had conducted. More importantly, she had a direct line to CEO Patricia Adams and a reputation for uncompromising ethical standards. The call connected after 3 rings. Charlotte Wilson speaking. Miss Wilson, this is Brenna Taylor from Compliance. I apologize for calling your direct line, but this is an urgent matter. There was a brief pause. Brenna, what can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I've just been terminated by CFO Bennett after refusing to approve a $49 million transfer to Aperture Holdings that violates multiple compliance protocols and potentially federal banking regulations. Another pause, longer this time. That's a serious statement. Where are you now? At a coffee shop near the office. I have documentation supporting all my concerns. Can you send it to me? Yes, I've already emailed everything to Jessica Morgan, but I can forward it to your secure email as well. Do that immediately. Then stay where you are. I'll call you back within 30 minutes. After sending the files to Charlotte, I sat staring at my cooling coffee. The cafe bustled with afternoon customers, people chatting about ordinary things, completely unaware of the financial machinations happening blocks away. I thought about all the regular people who trusted institutions like Meridian with their life savings, their retirement funds, their financial futures. People like my parents who had worked honestly their entire lives. The thought strengthened my resolve. My phone rang 20 minutes later, but it wasn't Charlotte. It was an old colleague from my previous bank who now worked at the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, the federal agency responsible for combating money laundering. Alicia, I'm surprised to hear from you, I answered. Brenna, I wanted to give you a heads up. We just received an unusual SAR filing regarding a large transaction from Meridian to an entity called Aperture Holdings. A suspicious activity report. Someone at Meridian had officially flagged the transaction. My heart raced. Can you tell me who filed it? You know I can't share that information. But I thought you should know this transaction is now on our radar. Is there anything you can tell me about it? I chose my words carefully. I'm no longer employed at Meridian as of about an hour ago after raising compliance concerns about that exact transaction. Alicia's tone changed immediately. Brenna, you need to document everything. This could be a whistleblower situation. I'm already on it. After hanging up with Alicia, my phone immediately rang again. This time it was Marcus. Brenna, things are crazy here, he said, his voice hushed. Gregory is on a rampage. The Aperture transfer has been flagged in the system, and he can't figure out why it's not processing. Did you flag it? I asked. No, that's the thing. It looks like Jessica submitted a SAR before she called in sick. Gregory is trying to override it, but the system has automatically frozen the transaction pending review. So that's why Jessica hadn't come in today. She must have submitted the report late last night after our conversation, knowing what was likely to happen. How is Gregory handling it? I asked. Not well. He's been on the phone with the bank's wire department for the last 20 minutes, demanding to know why the funds haven't moved. Just then, my phone beeped with another incoming call. Charlotte Wilson. Marcus, I need to take this. Keep me posted if you can. I switched calls. Hello, Miss Wilson. Brenna, I've reviewed your documentation and spoken with Jessica Morgan, who is apparently working from home today. I've also consulted with our legal team. Based on the information provided, I've initiated a full freeze on the Aperture transaction pending a complete investigation. Relief washed over me. Thank you for taking this seriously. This is exactly what our department exists to prevent. I'm troubled by Mr. Bennett's actions, particularly the termination, which appears to be retaliatory. I've escalated this to CEO Adams, who has called an emergency executive meeting for 5 p.m. My phone beeped again with a text from Marcus G. Just got off phone with bank. Looks like he was told funds are pending final release, and he's staring at your empty desk. If looks could kill. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction at that image. Miss Wilson, what happens next? I asked. For now, go home and rest. I'll need you to come in tomorrow morning to give a formal statement to our investigation team. And Brenna, your termination has been suspended pending review. Consider yourself on administrative leave with pay. After hanging up, I received an email from Diana Lopez in HR, requesting a meeting tomorrow to discuss the circumstances of recent events. The formal language couldn't hide the fact that the company was in damage control mode. As I finally left the coffee shop and headed home, my phone buzzed with yet another message. This one was from Jessica Emergency Executive Board meeting called. Gregory doesn't know what hit him. We need to talk tonight. Call me when you can. In just a few hours, I had gone from fired employee carrying my belongings out the door to a key witness in what was rapidly becoming a major corporate investigation. As I hailed a taxi home, I realized that Gregory's attempt to silence me had instead amplified my concerns to the highest levels of the company. His $49 million deal wasn't just frozen. It was now under the microscope of both Meridian's executive leadership and federal regulators. And it was only 4:30 p.m. The next morning arrived after a restless night. I had spoken with Jessica for over an hour, learning that she had indeed filed the suspicious activity report after our conversation, and then called in sick, anticipating Gregory's reaction. She had been working behind the scenes, gathering additional information and preparing to escalate the situation when she learned of my termination. I arrived at Meridian at 9 a.m. escorted by Charlotte Wilson herself through the main lobby. The security guard who had walked me out yesterday looked startled to see me returning with one of the most senior executives in the company. We bypassed the regular elevators and took the executive lift directly to the 25th floor, where the boardroom and investigation offices were located. The internal audit team has been working through the night, Charlotte explained as we walked. What they've found goes beyond the Aperture transaction. In a conference room overlooking the city, I met with a team of 4 investigators from Meridian's internal audit department led by senior investigator Lawrence Peterson. For 3 hours, I walked them through everything I knew about the Aperture transaction, Gregory's behavior, and the compliance issues I had identified. "You did exactly what you should have done," Lawrence assured me after I finished. "The documentation you maintained was impeccable." At noon, Charlotte returned. "We've made some significant discoveries I want to share with you," she said, closing the door. "First, we've confirmed that Alexander Hamilton is indeed Gregory Bennett's brother-in-law. He's married to Gregory's sister Elizabeth. This relationship was never disclosed in any of the paperwork. This explained the familiar feeling I had when seeing Hamilton's name. I must have seen it mentioned in some company social event or newsletter in connection with Gregory's family. Second, Charlotte continued, our forensic accountants have traced a pattern of transactions from Gregory's previous employer, Pinnacle Investments. 3 large deals with companies connected to Aperture Holdings, all pushed through with minimal due diligence. Were they fraudulent? I asked. We're still investigating, but the pattern suggests these were vehicles for moving money offshore with significant consulting fees being paid back to shell companies. We've contacted Pinnacle's current CFO, and they're conducting their own internal review now. Lawrence added, the plan appears to have been to transfer the $49 million to Aperture, which would then distribute it through a network of subsidiaries. Approximately $7 million would have been redirected to a consulting company called NextGen Advisors. Let me guess, I said. NextGen is connected to Gregory or Alexander. Charlotte nodded. Registered in the British Virgin Islands with a complex ownership structure. But we found documents linking it to accounts controlled by both men. The scope of what Gregory had attempted was becoming clear. He had used his position as CFO to approve a massive transfer that would ultimately benefit himself and his brother-in-law disguised as legitimate business. What's happening with Gregory now? I asked. He's been temporarily suspended pending the investigation. He doesn't know the full extent of what we've discovered yet, Charlotte explained. CEO Adams has called a special board meeting for 3 p.m. today. You'll be asked to attend. The board meeting was unlike anything I had experienced in my career. The full board of directors was present along with CEO Patricia Adams Charlotte and the company's general counsel Richard Barnes. Gregory was there too, sitting alone on one side of the table, his usually impeccable appearance showing signs of strain. CEO Adams opened the meeting by introducing me to the board. Miss Taylor's integrity and commitment to proper procedure have potentially saved this company from significant financial and reputational damage. Gregory immediately interjected. This is absurd. Miss Taylor was terminated for insubordination after repeatedly obstructing a strategic business transaction. This witch hunt is based on her vindictive allegations after being rightfully fired. Patricia Adams remained calm. Mr. Bennett, the evidence suggests otherwise. Miss Wilson, please present the findings of your investigation. For the next 45 minutes, Charlotte methodically outlined everything they had discovered, including the undisclosed family relationship, the pattern of suspicious transactions at Pinnacle, and the connection to NextGen Advisors. With each new revelation, Gregory's expression darkened. When Charlotte finished, Gregory leaned forward. This is all circumstantial. Yes, Alexander is married to my sister, but that doesn't mean there was anything improper about the transaction. Aperture Holdings is a legitimate business partner with viable projects. Richard Barnes, the general counsel, spoke next. Mr. Bennett, we have obtained emails from your personal account to Mr. Hamilton discussing, and I quote, the usual arrangement and our cut of the Meridian deal. These were sent from your personal Gmail account, but from your company device, which remains company property. Gregory's face went pale. You had no right to access my personal emails. Actually, our employment agreement explicitly states that any communication on company devices may be monitored, Barnes replied. Furthermore, we've received information from financial authorities that similar transactions at Pinnacle are now under investigation. Gregory changed tactics. This is all a misunderstanding. The communications with Alexander were about legitimate consulting arrangements. As for the relationship disclosure, that was an oversight that could have been corrected if Miss Taylor had brought it to my attention instead of filing malicious reports. I couldn't remain silent any longer. I did bring it to your attention, Mr. Bennett. Yesterday in your office before you fired me, you denied knowing Alexander Hamilton beyond professional interactions. Patricia Adams raised her hand to stop further back and forth. The board has heard enough to make an initial determination. Mr. Bennett, your employment with Meridian Financial Group is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building and you are instructed not to contact any Meridian employees while the investigation continues. We are also legally obligated to report these findings to the appropriate regulatory authorities. Gregory stood up, his composure finally breaking. You're making a massive mistake. I brought valuable connections to this company. You'll regret this decision. As security arrived to escort him out, Gregory stopped next to my chair. You think you've won, but this isn't over, he said quietly before being led away. After he left, Patricia turned to me. Miss Taylor, on behalf of the board and this company, I want to apologize for what you experienced. Your commitment to compliance standards exemplifies the values we want at Meridian. The board meeting concluded with a discussion of next steps, including a full audit of all transactions Gregory had approved during his tenure, and enhanced compliance protocols moving forward. Later that afternoon, news began filtering through the company about what had happened. Colleagues who had witnessed my unceremonious exit yesterday now looked at me with new respect as I returned to my department with Jessica and Charlotte. Marcus greeted me with a relieved smile. I knew you wouldn't go down without a fight. Jessica hugged me. I'm sorry I wasn't here yesterday. I thought filing the SAR and stepping back was the best approach, but I should have been here to support you. You did support me, I assured her. That SAR was what stopped the transaction. Over the next few days, more details emerged. Federal investigators had frozen Alexander Hamilton's accounts and were pursuing inquiries in multiple countries. An examination of Gregory's previous deals at Pinnacle had uncovered at least 3 other suspicious transactions following the same pattern totaling over $100 million. The most shocking revelation came a week later when forensic accountants discovered evidence suggesting Gregory and Alexander had been planning to process the $49 million transfer and then immediately resign from their common, respective positions. One way or another, that money would have disappeared overseas, and both men would have vanished from the financial industry before anyone realized what had happened. What Gregory hadn't counted on was one compliance specialist who refused to look the other way, even when threatened with the end of her career. His attempt to silence me had instead brought everything crashing down around him, all because he underestimated both my integrity and the systems designed to prevent exactly this type of fraud. As news of the thwarted scheme spread throughout Meridian, the atmosphere in the office changed dramatically. The culture of fear Gregory had created dissipated, replaced by a renewed commitment to ethical standards. My colleagues, who had begun cutting corners under pressure, now recommitted to proper procedures, seeing firsthand the importance of our compliance work. And it had all started with one transaction that landed on my desk and ended with a phone call at 3:59 p.m. that changed everything. 3 weeks after the dramatic board meeting, I found myself in Patricia Adams's office, sitting across from the CEO herself. The large windows behind her desk offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a visual reminder of how far I had come from my modest beginnings. Brenna, I'll get straight to the point, Patricia began. Jessica Morgan has recommended you for promotion to Director of Compliance Operations for our Northeast region. I've reviewed your file and wholeheartedly agree with her assessment. I sat there momentarily speechless. The position was 2 levels above my previous role and typically required at least 10 years of experience. That's a significant promotion I finally managed. Patricia smiled. Extraordinary circumstances call for extraordinary decisions. You demonstrated exactly the kind of integrity and courage we need in leadership positions. The board has also approved a comprehensive review and enhancement of our compliance protocols, and we'd like you to be part of the team spearheading that initiative. I accepted the position, of course. The promotion came with a substantial salary increase, a larger office, and a team of 15 compliance specialists reporting directly to me. But more valuable than any of those things was the knowledge that my professional judgment had been vindicated at the highest level. The following week, Patricia held a company-wide meeting to address the recent events. Standing at the podium in the main auditorium, she spoke candidly about what had happened. Integrity isn't just a word on our mission statement, she told the assembled employees. It's the foundation of everything we do in banking. One person standing firm on principle protected this institution from significant harm. Brenna Taylor exemplifies the values that must guide all of us. I felt a mixture of pride and embarrassment as hundreds of colleagues applauded. Jessica, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand supportively. After the meeting, Jessica and I had a private conversation in her office. I should have done more to protect you, she said, regret evident in her voice. I knew Gregory was targeting our department, but I never imagined he would go so far as to fire you for doing your job. You did what you could, I assured her. Filing that SAR was crucial. Without it, the transaction might have gone through before anyone could stop it. Still, I should have been there, when you walked out with that box of belongings. It led to where we are now, I reminded her. Sometimes the hardest moments lead to the best outcomes. Our relationship had evolved through this experience. Jessica was still my superior in the organizational hierarchy, but we now shared a bond forged in adversity. The trust between us had deepened, creating a partnership that would serve the company well in the years ahead. My personal life had changed too. Ryan had been incredibly supportive throughout the ordeal, proud of how I had handled myself. We accelerated our plans to move in together, finding a larger apartment that we both loved. The security of my new position, with its improved compensation, allowed me to refinance my condo mortgage at better terms. 6 months after Gregory's firing, the full legal consequences of his actions began to materialize. The Justice Department filed charges against both Gregory and Alexander for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Their scheme had apparently been operating for years across multiple financial institutions, with Meridian being just the latest target. Gregory had managed to move significant funds offshore before being caught, but federal authorities were working with international partners to freeze and recover those assets. He was facing up to 20 years in prison if convicted on all counts. In my new role as Director of Compliance Operations, I implemented several changes to strengthen our review processes. We developed enhanced software tools to identify relationship patterns between parties in large transactions. We established clearer escalation procedures for compliance concerns, ensuring that no single executive could override safeguards. Most importantly, we created a culture where raising red flags was rewarded rather than punished. 1 year to the day after my termination and reinstatement, I was invited to speak at a financial industry conference on compliance best practices. Standing at the podium before hundreds of banking professionals, I shared my experience without naming specific individuals or institutions. The moment I was asked to choose between my job security and my professional integrity was terrifying, I told the audience. But in retrospect, it wasn't really a choice at all. Our role as compliance professionals isn't just about following rules or checking boxes. It's about protecting the integrity of the financial system that millions of people depend on. The journey from that moment, at 3:59 p.m. when I walked out of Meridian carrying my belongings to standing on that stage as a respected industry speaker, had transformed me in ways I never anticipated. The fear and uncertainty I felt that day had given way to a deeper confidence in my own judgment and principles. What Gregory never understood was that true power doesn't come from title or authority, it comes from alignment with truth and integrity. He had all the trappings of power as CFO, but his house of cards collapsed because it was built on deception. My strength came from standing firmly on principle even when it seemed I had everything to lose. The experience taught me that our greatest tests often come disguised as our worst moments. When Gregory fired me, it felt like the end of my career. Instead, it became the catalyst for my greatest professional growth. Sometimes the very thing we fear most, standing alone against pressure, becomes our moment of greatest triumph. In the banking world, we often focus on numbers, regulations, and procedures. But ultimately, financial systems are built on something far more fundamental: trust. Trust that people will do the right thing even when it's difficult. Trust that systems will protect against those who don't. My story had become a small but meaningful chapter in maintaining that trust. Sometimes the 31 minutes between 3:59 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. can change your entire life trajectory. Not because of what someone does to you, but because of how you choose to respond. In those critical moments, when ethics and self-interest appear to conflict, the choices we make define not just our careers, but our character. Have you ever faced a moment where standing up for what's right seemed like it might cost you everything? How did you handle it, and what did you learn? Drop your stories in the comments below, and if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about integrity in the workplace. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to stand firm when tested. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your integrity is worth more than any job title or paycheck.